All right, everyone, we have good news and bad news. The good news is that the Supreme Court of the United States sided with the Trump administration with regards to deportation involving people from Venezuela, Nicaragua, a few other countries. It amounts to 500,000 people, by the way. Of course, I would not prioritize deporting someone who did nothing else illegal, especially if they had a kid in the country. They're not a cartel member or something like that, but SCOTUS has cleared the way in a 7-2 decision, by the way. Katanji was one of the dissenters. This probably doesn't surprise you. The other one was Sotomayor. That probably doesn't confuse you either. Link in the description, by the way, archived, of course. The bad news is this is a temporary emergency order. That is, that this is still being litigated in the lower courts. What the Supreme Court therefore did was simply say, and they didn't even write a statement about it because it was, an emergency decision. They simply punt it back down to the lower courts and allow it to continue to be litigated while affirming that Trump has the right to proceed on these kinds of deportations while it is being litigated. So this is not a final decision. In the end, I believe they will probably side with the Trump administration anyway. It'll probably be a 5-4 decision, although Roberts could skew things. You never know with him. You never know with Amy Coney Barrett sometimes either, honestly, depending on the issue. It's funny. The justices have a lot more nuance to them than people give them credit for, with the exception of a few very, very out there individuals. For example, Clarence Thomas, he's always going to make what would be conceived of as the more conservative decision. Ketanji is always going to make what would be conceived of as the more liberal decision. But there's nuance in most of the court. We see this especially with Kavanaugh, actually. Again, depending on the issue, which is actually a good thing sometimes, but only sometimes. So SCOTUS siding with Trump. Again, what this means is that he's capable of deporting these individuals. I think Venezuela, Nicaragua, I think Panama was on the list. And so he can proceed with that. The problem, here's the big problem, is finding these individuals. Because the Joe Biden administration did not give a shit about the border, these people have effectively disappeared into all parts of the country. They're not just concentrated at the southern border. They're all over the place. Some states have given them sanctuary effectively, so they can just literally gobble up taxpayer money. And I mean, they're not necessarily living in posh conditions, but it's probably better than living in rural Venezuela. I'll just tell it like that. So the problem is actually finding them. I mean, we've got judicial activism to the point where that one judge, that Hannah woman, getting in trouble, getting charged now. Now, by the way, proclaiming immunity on basically anything, claiming judicial immunity, was literally trying to shuttle an illegal immigrant accused of multiple crimes out of the goddamn courthouse just to evade ICE and the DEA. Yeah, we've come full circle as a country. We went from a country that's comprised of its citizens to a country that's comprised mainly of a bunch of judicial activists and foreigners that they protect in order to, I guess, upend society. Commies, basically, more than anything else. It's a very, very strange situation that we find ourselves in. That particular case, took the cake, in my opinion. I was laughing at that. Like, oh, this is so absurd. I can't even be hostile towards it because it's just so goddamn funny that it would happen. So again, it's basically like a comedy skit. In this particular case, though, um, I believe that SCOTUS made the right decision. It is a temporary decision though, and a lot of people when they're analyzing this, they're not telling their audience that this is temporary. This is an emergency decision that was made that is basically a stopgap. This means that Donald Trump is capable of proceeding with deportation arrangements for these groups of people but it is not a permanent binding decision. It's basically telling the lower courts, hey, continue to consider this, but in the same time period that you're considering it, Donald is actually allowed to deport these groups of people or docket them for deportation, I believe, rather. So it's a victory and a really nice one, actually, but it's not a complete victory. It's like winning a battle, not winning a war, so to speak. We'll see exactly how the war goes with regards to whether the courts finally decide to side, finally, with the American public, with people that are citizens and lawful residents, or whether it sides against them and has decided to effectively collapse our fucking society. Because that is what will happen. I want to make it plain here. I do not have a problem with foreigners. I do not have a problem with immigrants. Both of my wives have been foreigners, by the way, Mexican and Dutch. I have no problem with this. What I do have a problem with is the concept that effectively we're just going to throw open the border and everything will be overrun by anyone who wants to come in. You'll get infiltration, you'll get cartels, you'll get terrorism, and in the end, you'll get utter chaos as the economy collapses. And any union worker out there, they tend to be Democratic Party voters. I hate to say this, but your wages are definitely going to get depressed when people realize that, hey, there are no rules anymore. I can just hire someone for $2 an hour and they'll think themselves happy for doing so because they're so used to poverty in their home country that that seems like a lot to them. They're making way more money. Hell, they're sending half of it back home as remittances. And then they'll get their tax disbursement because they're not making enough to actually pay taxes, so they'll get a refund. They'll get a return. That's exactly what will happen. It will literally upend our society. It will no longer be functional. It's not that I don't have mercy towards people from other countries, it's that I'm pragmatic. I understand the consequences of that kind of policy. Most of DC does too. These people are not stupid, they're malevolent. They want slave labor and they don't care about the United States. They don't give a shit. Their investments are all over the world in most cases. Oh, why do I care if this country collapses? Half of my money's in China. Well, wonderful. It's great to be you. It's not so great for the average working or middle class American. I think that it's about time we do something about this. That's about all. Peace out.